Welcome to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development for this Wednesday, May the 6th of 2026. My name is Councillor Evan Duncan. I'll be chairing today's meeting, joined by my council colleagues, Councillor Dobson and Councillor Santos, as well as our senior committee clerk, Ms. Cowan, and the Director of Planning, Property and Development, Ms. Boris. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territories, the traditional homelands of the national homeland of the Red River Métis, and that our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. Prior to the start of our meeting, could I have someone move the minutes of our previous?
So moved.
Thank you. That's moved by Councillor Santos. Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. We do have more delegations, including Councillor Lukes appearing remotely here today. I'll have the clerk introduce our delegations.
Okay, so first to be heard today is Councillor Lukes with speaking in support of Report 10, and Councillor Lukes is joining us via Zoom today. Hey, Councillor.
Hey, good morning. Can you guys hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yes, so we're just going to be going on a spring cleanup shortly. It's not really spring out, but I really wanted to come to the meeting and just make a little delegation here. So item number, I believe it's 11, is the Bridgewater lot development. Is that correct?
Item number 10. Item
10.
number
10. Okay, so I really want to encourage you to move that along. I know that it was laid over to this meeting, but we've had that empty lot for a long time. I don't know. I think maybe we've got a representative from Manitoba Housing in the room, but or a consultant. But we really want to move that along. So it's important. Roads and pipes and all kinds of things are going to be going in. So I want to encourage you to move it along. Now, on that same note, I do know that Councillor Wyatt had asked for information to understand what money was extracted from the neighborhoods of Bridgewater. And I did mention this at council, which I don't think he was in the room at that time, but I do want to put this on the record. Many people have an animosity for this suburban development. But they don't understand the concept behind the neighborhoods of Bridgewater. The provincial government under Gary Dewar purchased the land and became the developer under the umbrella of Manitoba Housing. And every lot that's sold in the neighborhoods of Bridgewater, the profit or percentage of funding goes into an account. And then the government, who is the owner of the land, takes that money and reinvests it in the downtown, in inner city housing, in housing that's Manitoba Housing owns. So it's rather unique in that the largest development that Manitoba Housing has ever undertaken, and it's almost finished, thank goodness, the largest development, all the profit and the revenue that comes out of that development, which is in the hundreds of millions, goes into downtown, inner city development, whatever. I've submitted, now I think Ms. Cowan, the clerk, you've got that information. I submitted a couple pages. We went into Manitoba Housing's annual reports and we tried to identify the value. But we all know the challenge sometimes with transparency and levels of government. Initially, when Manitoba Housing started recording the money that was coming out of Bridgewater, it was very clear and concise, and you'll see it. And Madam Clerk, if you could share that with committee members and post that in the minutes, I'd appreciate it. You can see that it's very clear, and then the accounting process changed, and it's very unclear, and we have no idea, which is really regrettable because this is public funding, and it would be good to know what profit came out of this public purchase that is going into inner city and other Manitoba Housing developments to improve housing. So I do want that on the record. I know Councillor Wyatt is not at the meeting. I will send it to him. Maybe you'll get more information later with one of your delegations. I'm not sure. It would be nice. But I just wanted to make note of that and put that on the record.
Okay. Any questions at all from committee at this point in time?
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take your delegation under advisement for item number 10. Thank you very much for appearing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Madam Clerk.
Next is Cindy Chadwell, Executive Director, Heritage Winnipeg Corporation, to be heard with respect to Report 2. Cindy's joining us in person today.
Morning,
Morning, Cindy. How are
County
you? Good to
Sports.
see you.
Okay, I'm here for item 2, no surprise, promoting adaptive reuse and preservation of heritage. I just kind of read the report a couple of times and thought I'd go through some salient points that I picked up on it because I think there's a lot in there to digest. So we're here to, on behalf of Heritage Winnipeg, to support the recommendations in the report. I think it is a great start, and we're very thankful that this is moving forward. And just to give clarity, Heritage Winnipeg for almost 50 years in 2028 has been an advocate, educator, and supporter of Winnipeg's built heritage. And for decades, our organization has been working with the city of Winnipeg. I'm a little biased, but we believe we're an immense asset, but moreover, a communicator to the public and to the developers and building owners. So accountability for what is going on internally to the public and to act as an educator so that we are in this position today. I read the report and I thought, wow, those are a lot of things that we have really been on board for a long, long time. So looking at the comprehensive zoning bylaw review in 2027, so we feel that this is very important in tandem with what's going to be advocated. And in order to meet the climate goals, which is great because we've been saying for decades the greenest building is an existing building, this initiative to see adaptive reuse or rehabilitation when related to heritage structures, as opposed to going to landfills. So again, the core of the heritage conservation movement. Report back in 100 days to the Climate Action and Resilience Committee, and also with input from HBRC. So this is my little plug to say nowhere in the report did we see any consultation with stakeholders. And I think that was a critical mistake to miss that. Now that could be building owners, heritage building owners, developers, Heritage Winnipeg as that's conduit to the public. And certainly we have really stepped up in the last decade and a half, 2 decades since the implementation of Centre Venture to Work, and in concert with developers, as opposed to sort of the heritage movement in the 70s and 80s where it was very contentious and it was us against them. Those days are over. A lot of developers are sitting down with us and we're trying to understand each other. And I want to thank Councillor Santos and Councillor Lukes for initiating and participating in some important steps to have that conversation with the heritage community and with the developers. Protecting heritage places, consider creating an inventory list is another recommendation out of the report. So you talk about protecting heritage structures that are architecturally, historically, and culturally significant that may or may not be designated, but I can tell you right now, if they're not designated, I don't know where that discretion comes in the protocol when the development or the building permit is submitted to the planning and property department, because there would be no intervention from stakeholders. So the inventory list pre-2014, before the heritage bylaws were changed, was hundreds of buildings, including residences, but they primarily privately owned. Before the creation of the first HCD in the city of Winnipeg in Armstrong's Point in 2019, the intent was to, I'm not sure, we never really understood why 250 buildings and homes were dropped off the then inventory list, then put on a commemorative which has no implementation or any involvement with stakeholders. So it's there commemorating the property. Good example, because I like to be practical, is 514 Wellington. That building was on the inventory pre-2014, dropped when the list was dropped, and to commemorative, and then allowed for demolition. This would have been a perfect opportunity to implement adaptive reuse and densification in the Crescentwood area while respecting the beautiful Tudor style character of that Wellington mansion. So that is one of the recommendations, is in tandem with looking at the zoning bylaws, that you also, with consultation, look at the heritage bylaws and possibly amending them to really understand that that list would be critical if this was to work, because I'm not sure how planners would red flag which properties are significant enough to disallow demolition. I just have to be cognizant of my time. And so we feel that all these things in the toolkit, and so we put in practical terms what's already happening in the exchange.
Move an extension.
Sorry, I had too much to say.
2 minutes, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried, please continue.
So I think what I'm trying to say is a lot of these things are already kind of working unofficially. But I think if I'm here to be proactive, we 100% support this report, but we feel that we need to consult with and for the heritage sector. And so we feel our input, along with the developers, we're continuing to meet with developers. So realistic projects right now: Sanford Building, Moz Garage, Saddlery Building, St. Charles Hotel, Marlborough Hotel. There's so many now, they're just exploding. And those are the people, and there are just a handful, those are the people that actually are taking the risks and spending millions of dollars. And one thing that resonated loudly was permit fees and delays. Especially if you want to segregate this report to downtown development, that those handful of people cannot continue without some of those permit fees being waived, construction fees, parking fees for downtown development, which is difficult compared to the suburbs. So realistic things that they can add when this report goes forward to actually have what we hope will come into fruition and be implemented, and going forward can evolve. We think it's fluid, and we think it's time after 12 years for the city to also look at amendments to the heritage bylaws. So again, they're also looking at creating a green demolition bylaw. I already think in part, there's part of that to look at the heritage bylaw in tandem for specifically heritage properties designated and undesignated. And we would like to be involved in this process. We already are on our own accord doing our due diligence with heritage building owners and developers, so that we can come, like today, informed and educated in what we're supporting. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Thank you for your delegation today. Just a quick question around the original motion that came from Riel. Were you consulted at all, or anyone within Winnipeg Heritage Corporation?
No.
As you speak and the whole consultation piece, remind me again, it was when I first came onto council, there was a committee that I believe you were appointed to, and then it was revoked.
Correct.
Okay, so I know this is a separate matter, but having Heritage Winnipeg on such a committee, remind me again, what was the committee?
Yeah, I think the one you're speaking about is the Crescentwood HCD committee.
Okay.
And then so previous to that, HBRC were not allowed to be on that committee or have representation with our organization due to conflict of interest, which we've disputed for decades.
And would there be any crossover between initiatives like this and either of those committees to, do some of the consultation you talked about preliminarily before these types of recommendations come forward?
Yes, I think so, because I know with Armstrong's Point, we're also not on that committee. They weren't consulted on key issues that were happening in the neighborhood within the last several years. Crescentwood again has representation, so a different structure. They enhanced it and put representation from 2 residences in the area, but our motion was revoked that Heritage Winnipeg sit on the committee. And I guess in summation and in a general sense, I wish the city would see Heritage Winnipeg as an asset. We were created by the city as again that important conduit between the public and public taxpayers and as educators, school, youth, program. I mean, our breadth of our work, as you know, is very broad, but we are here to help the city and to bridge that gap between contention, so that when something goes forward, we're not here speaking on behalf of the heritage community that they don't want to see it happen.
Anything else, committee? That's all I have. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Nick Logan to be heard with respect to report 4.
Thank you.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
I'm representing Friends of Peter Park.
Please grab a seat so the mic can pick you up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
The park is located on Ruskin Road between Harvard and Yale. It's in Old Crescentwood, which is a Heritage Conservation District. Park was given to the city in 1902 as a English garden park, and the city's responsibility was to the care and custody of it. And that worked till about 1960, and it had a gardener and gardens and was beautiful. At that time, the city, for some reason, took out the fencing, took out the shrubs, took out the gardens, and just left it as a vacant park, vacant lot. It deteriorated substantially over the years. It was flooded. The trees started dying. And so about 20 some odd years ago, we took it over as neighbors and incorporated it as Friends of Peter Park. And had an agreement with John Kiernan at Property and Development as to what we would do and what the city would do, and it worked really well. We put over 100 trees in that park. We put new benches, new picnic tables, new play structure. We crowned the park with sodding and raised it. We put our own drainage into it. We reestablished all the gardens. We have 9 gardens with shrubs and annuals and perennials. And we support all this with a gardener that we pay for. And we have all the money we collected that goes right into the park or goes into a legacy fund at the Winnipeg Foundation to make sure this park is taken care of in perpetuity. So we think it's a model the city should take and use our experience to drop it into other neighborhood parks and relieve parks of all the responsibility of having to come and maintain and do all the work they would normally do for other parks that they did for us at one time. So we'd love to help you do that because people ask us how we've managed to do this. But recently, maybe a year ago, the city or planning wanted a new agreement, a long boilerplate agreement, which we signed, and it doesn't really apply to us, but we signed it. And I'm here to say they've asked us to pay $300 a year for this agreement, which we didn't really ask for. And we think we should be exempt from it, and that money should go back into the park or the legacy fund. There you have it.
Thank you very much. Questions at all? So specific to the fee associated with the license, you're looking for, the organization already paid the 300, I'm assuming?
I suspect we have.
Okay.
But
So,
for the future, we get exempted. I like it exempt.
okay. Okay. All right. Questions at all? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your delegation. We appreciate the work that you're doing there. I don't disagree with you that it is a model example of how these neighborhood parks could be cared for and operated. So, yes, I agree with you on that. Appreciate it very much.
I'm glad to help you on that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Madam Clerk.
Okay. And our delegation today is Megan Bowles, lead planner with WSP Canada Inc., to be heard with respect to report 10. And Megan is joining us via Zoom. Hi, Megan. You have up to 5 minutes for your presentation.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me. I'm Megan Bowles, registered professional planner with WSP, and I'm the applicant for the extension of time for item 10 on your agenda on behalf of my client, Manitoba Housing. So I do have a few more speaking points that were provided to me by my clients about the building fund that Councillor Luke spoke to earlier as a delegation. So the Housing and Renewal Corporation Amendment Act was given royal assent and came into force in 2007. And that established legislation to ensure that Manitoba Housing suburban land development profits were deposited into a fund so that those monies could be safeguarded and reinvested by Manitoba Housing for housing specific programs and initiatives in areas that identified need. And that fund was called the Housing Development and Rehabilitation Fund. In 2013, a legislative amendment was approved to allow profits from that fund to be used to support the repair and maintenance and capital renewal of Manitoba Housing social housing stock. The fund was primarily comprised of profits that Manitoba Housing realized from land development initiatives, such as the development of the Bridgewater neighborhood. And so that fund was available to support housing development, particularly affordable and mixed income housing. And that included the development of new housing or the rehabilitation, repair, and maintenance of existing housing of Manitoba Housing's owned stock. The development of Winnipeg's Bridgewater neighborhood accounted for the majority of the $161 million that was invested into that fund. And that fund was repealed on March 31st, 2021. And that annual summary of those invested funds was published in the province of Manitoba's annual report up until 2020, 2021.
That concludes your presentation?
It does. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Megan. Any questions at this time? So after 2021, then where is the information that, indirectly was requested by, at the time, Councillor Wyatt?
Yeah, I can't speak to that directly. I don't have notes from my client on that, but just given Councillor Luke's presentation, I'm inclined to think that sort of when the accounting was sort of done differently, and potentially it's harder to track after that point.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't make the motion myself, but I assume that the spirit of the delay was to identify where exactly these evil greenfield infill developments are contributing to Manitoba housing projects and potentially, as you noted there, programs that impact lower income neighborhoods. So we don't have that information.
All that was I spoke to sort of what I was provided to communicate to the committee today. I'm certain, the city is able to ask Manitoba Housing for sort of additional details unrelated to the extension of time that's on your agenda today. So.
Well, the area council has requested that the committee move forward with that, and I'm assuming that you're not looking for any further delay.
No, correct. I mean, we're very close to being complete for that subdivision, and we really just needed the extension of time to address some changes regarding a drainage easement on the site. So we'd like to, proceed as soon as we can with that and not have further delays.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for appearing in delegation today. I don't see any questions from the committee, so enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you. That's the end of our delegations. And just for some housekeeping before we get into our reports, I apologize, Madam Clerk, I'm going to put you on the spot here. This committee now consists of 3 councillors. Therefore, we have any votes that pass will be at a 2-to-1. Yes, majority is now 2-to-1. Should a councillor be absent for a meeting, to meet quorum is a minimum of 2 councillors.
Yes.
Yeah. And that could include the chair, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So myself and any one councillor would satisfy quorum, and a 2-to-1 vote would be a recommendation in favor. All right, and we'll move forward with this committee of 3 until otherwise directed by council. Thank you very much. Moving into our reports, we have 20 before us today. We'll start with item number 1, which is a request to refund the inspection fee associated with vacant building Schedule A inspection fee invoice for 254 Ferry Road. Mr. Burgess.
Good morning, councillors. I'm Corey Burgess, Coordinator of Bylaw Enforcement Operations for Community Services, Licensing and Bylaw Enforcement. I do have some prepared statements and preamble for the record. I'll also draw your attention to the enforcement summary and photos provided as exhibits, as well as the delegate submission. The appellant didn't appear today, so you'll have to rely on their submission. Vacant building bylaw 79/2010 was adopted by council to regulate the condition of vacant buildings and discourage boardings. The bylaw provides guidelines for property owners to maintain their properties. One of the main objectives is for the safety of first responders and for the overall safety and well-being of the community. It's important to note that licensing and bylaw enforcement is primarily complaint-based and responds to community concerns about a vacant building received through 311 or as referrals from other agencies such as the Winnipeg Fire Department. In accordance with section 15.2 of the vacant building bylaw enforcement officers conduct regular inspections of vacant buildings. At minimum, once per year, officers conduct an interior-exterior inspection of the building to identify minimum property standards as laid out in Schedule A of the bylaw. Fees have been established as an incentive for owners to develop, reoccupy, or otherwise maintain vacant buildings. The fees are charged only once per year for conducting inspections. The vacant building inspection fee for 2026 is $1,725. Properties that are vacant and compliant with Schedule A, meaning no orders are issued, are assessed a reduced fee of $740. The first inspection of the interior and exterior of the property, unless conditions are egregious or multiple complaints are received, will occur around 30 days after the building is confirmed vacant. Properties that remain vacant for an extended period of time are also subject to escalator fees and empty building fees. Escalator fees kick in on the second and subsequent vacant building inspection. Empty building fees are applied annually until the property is confirmed occupied or demolished. Specific to this property, the appellant represents the company that owns a vacant building. Licensing and bylaw enforcement was involved with the property prior to their ownership for enforcing the neighborhood livability bylaw. In December of 2025, a vacant building investigation was opened as officers observed multiple boarded windows. The appellant became the owner on or about January 5th. Licensing and bylaw enforcement completed the investigation and declared the building vacant on January 12th. Very tight time frame where the ownership changed and we became involved as a vacant building. We became aware of the vacant building change in ownership 2 days after we called it vacant on January 14th. This inspection was the first inspection of a vacant building. There's no escalator fees, no empty building fees. It is just the inspection fee that is being appealed today. Of note, 4 orders have been issued on the property. The owner has complied with 3 of the 4. And they have applied for a development permit and are seeking to redevelop the property. So they are moving in the direction of compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions at all?
Yeah, okay, so I'm looking at the photos here.
This is from submission of the
Yes, I
Winnipeg
think
Public
the
Service.
Public Services submission, I think it's page 3. Do note that the date the photos were taken were in February. But you guys had been at the property when, so just give me some timelines here.
We started our investigation as a vacant building in December.
In December,
We flipped
was it through a 311 complaint?
It did come in as a 311 complaint, yeah.
Okay, are we aware of how long it maybe sat vacant since that call from 311?
I can only speak to our involvement from the point we first attended.
Okay, so you first attended in December and noted it was vacant.
Started our investigation. There's a couple of steps we go through before we
Right.
call something a vacant building.
Okay,
And utility checks, other things. So it wasn't until January that we declared it a vacant building.
Right.
And moved into enforcement.
okay, and then at that time, you mentioned there was obviously a new owner at that time.
Yes, our
Okay.
involvement as a vacant building coincided with a change in ownership.
Okay. And
which
then
is
in your
rare, but-
discussions with this, Mr. John Galachuk, he says their intention is to demolish the existing building and build a quadplex. All permits have been submitted. So you had mentioned he has pulled permits, right?
What I can see in the system is that they've applied for a variance and applied for a development permit,
Okay.
not at the point where they're doing demolition permit or build permit. Those could happen concurrently, but we don't see that at this point.
So then how come, I know you guys can do like the reduced fee, like the 50% fee. Why did you charge the full fee?
Because there were orders issued at the time of the
Oh, I
inspection.
see. Okay,
The fee is assessed based on whether or not it is Schedule A compliant at the time of the inspection. They have since, as I said, closed 3 of those 4 orders
Mhm.
as they are moving to compliance. At the time of the inspection, they were not compliant. And as of our last onsite on April 27th, The building does remain conventionally secured, but there is a garbage accumulation in the rear yard. So there's still some work to be done.
And the boarded up, it doesn't even look like the appropriate boards. From what I'm seeing in February, like the top windows are not boarded up, some of the windows are not boarded up.
And currently, all boards have been removed.
And currently, all boards have now been removed.
Correct.
Do we know why?
I believe it was so they didn't have to get a boarding building permit, and they wanted to satisfy our vacant security order to install the correct boarding or to conventionally secure.
So it is conventionally secured.
It meets the definition of conventionally secured at this time.
Okay, Counselor,
Just to be clear, okay, in this January 12th, it was declared vacant, and then an information package was sent out.
We sent an information package on January 12th, and we became aware of the change in ownership January 14th, at which point we had to resend some letters.
Okay, so it was sent out on January 16th, then, the package. It's listed here.
Yeah. 14th, 16th, I'll
and
rely on what you're reading.
And we normally give them 30 days to comply?
Typically, we give 30 days.
Okay.
So we were scheduled to go in on February the 10th, and we kept that date.
Okay, and the pictures here are February 13th, so it was about a month. Okay. Yeah, it's February 10th, I see, pardon me, you're right. About a month. Okay.
Wait, I'm prepared to.
the fourth compliance order is what? That is unresolved.
Central Field.
Excellent question, Counselor. We have an outstanding Schedule A order. I don't have the details of what's on that order, but it will be for conditions of the property under Schedule A, so not related to boarding.
Okay, so that would be more in line with like neighborhood livability.
Some of the language is very similar, but it's more focused on holes in the floors, eaves troughs, foundations.
They wouldn't have any intention of fixing that anyway because they want it demolished.
Correct.
Okay, so when they refer to in their submission, the fourth compliance order should be resolved once we receive a demolition permit. Are we aware of an application for a demolition permit?
At the time of preparing for this meeting, I did not see one, although I would defer to my colleagues in PP&D for that.
Okay. Madam Director,
Or we did not yet receive a demolition permit. However, we did receive a development permit, which was issued on March 2.
okay. So we do know that somebody can seek a demolition permit without a DP anymore.
True.
Okay, so when the applicant or the appellant here refers to building a fourplex, is that something that this lot allows for?
Yes, I just measured it on iView. It is 50 feet wide. So it is, and it does have a paved rear lane and curb and gutter out front. So it would comply.
Although the intention, comment for committee here, although the intention to do all these excellent things for the neighborhood is there, should we allow for this appeal to move forward? That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do it. So I would caution that if our hope is to give this person more time, considering they were in the 7-day range from ownership to inspection, I would be supportive of that. I don't know that I'd be supportive of completely waiving the fee at this point in time.
I was looking at maybe doing 50% refund. Or we could lay it over for 60 days and see what happens within 60 days with the development permit and variance stuff. And see
I
if he
mean,
applies for a demo.
the beauty of this all is that the department can move within 2 weeks to issue a demolition permit now, which we worked on. So,
Mhm.
I mean, technically, this could be done by the next meeting. Which, if they're serious about building a fourplex, then I think that they would want to get moving on that as quickly as possible.
When's our next committee meeting?
June 11th.
Well, there's an appeals meeting on the 25th, but the next regular meeting is June 11th.
Yeah, my concern with this particular site is that we were a little too quick. It's.
That's
That's
not
a problem.
I respect that comment, but that's not my concern. I'm happy to quick.
We were a little too quick to apply this. It's good that we do an inspection, but we didn't give the owner all that much time to comply.
Hey, that's the risk in purchasing properties.
Yeah.
We're not in the investment game here for purchasing property, so that's on the landowner, not us. If there's an appetite to allow for an additional 30 days, I would be supportive of that. However, if not, I'm looking to impose the fee. Anybody have a motion here? Does somebody want to take the chair?
Give it 30 days.
Okay, I can give it 3 days, yeah. Okay,
Can we have the wording,
the wording
Counselor,
for-
that
lay it over for 30 days.
It's like to lay the matter over to the June 11th meeting of the
Yeah.
standing committee.
Let's do that.
okay. So as voiced by the clerk, you agree with that, Counselor Santos?
Yeah.
Okay, and Counselor Santos moves the lay over to the next meeting of P and D. All in favor?
Right.
Opposed, carried. All right. Appreciate that, Mr. Burgess. We can move on to item number 2. We had delegation here. This is in regards to promoting adaptive reuse and preservation of heritage. Madam Director,
Sure, I'll hand it over to Curtis Kowalski,
there's.
Sure, I can provide a little summary if
Please.
you would like. So this report is in response to the motion from November 7th meeting of this committee, which reflected the motion from Riel Community Committee prior to that. And the motion focused on finding ways to promote adaptive reuse, heritage and non-heritage buildings by undertaking a cross-jurisdictional review, effectively some research on other cities in collaboration with the Climate Action and Resilience Committee. So 4 cities were researched: Halifax, Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver. And we focused on low-cost land use incentives were explored as opposed to grants and cash incentives. So these cities offered a combination of regulations and incentives, in other words, carrots and sticks, mainly focusing on the creation of additional multifamily residential units. The program and tools included flexible zoning and density transfers in exchange for listed heritage building conservation or character home, in other words, non-listed building retention. Bylaw regulations that allowed for existing housing conversions from single to multifamily. Additions with no cap on the number of units, which we saw in other cities doing that as of right. And we saw rules about material reuse and recycling in association with the demolition of character homes. Obviously, the adaptive reuse of buildings is good for the environment. It diverts material from the landfill and reduces carbon emissions associated with construction materials and construction activity. It helps maintain our historic streetscapes and neighborhood character, and it potentially improves the variety of housing options within the city. This report is being received as information. It was requested in the context of our zoning bylaw rewrite, obviously the need for more housing, and in order to meet our climate action targets.
Thank you. Yeah, Madam Director.
Sure, and just to add to what Curtis mentioned, you know, in response to the delegations that we heard earlier, there was no budget allocated to this Riel Community Committee motion. So there was neither direction nor budget to engage in community consultation. However, the ideas from this report will be considered in the full zoning bylaw rewrite currently underway, with public open houses starting 2 weeks from yesterday, which does have a significant amount of community consultation. So that is where that portion of this engagement will occur.
Okay, so
Just,
any questions at all here?
I had a question. Just give me a second.
Yeah, no problem. So what I'm hearing here is that the motion that came from Riel will be considered in the zoning rewrite, including comments made by public service in the report.
Correct.
Mr. Santos?
Yeah, so okay, I'm just looking on page 12. of the report, a very long lengthy report, but totally fine. In plain language, it says for all existing houses. So you got a current bylaw allows single family homes with placed up to 4 units without a requirement pertaining to existing buildings. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. It's like that as of right. But then in the second paragraph, it says bylaw could be amended to exempt development permits for the reoccupancy of vacant single and 2 family. And then it goes and reduce barrier to existing. Could you just, in like very simple terms, explain that to me?
Yeah, sure. So
That paragraph?
they're referring to situations where you have a house or a multifamily building that is sort of legally non-conforming. In other words, it's historic but doesn't comply with current zoning. So right now, if a building's been vacant for a period of time, it's lost those zoning rights. A person has to come in, reapply to rezone the property to the appropriate category in order to reestablish residential on that site. So what we've seen in some other cities is they've tried to loosen that, the regulatory hurdles around that in order to reestablish residential on a site that previously had residential.
Or even to add to that, potentially on a site that was mixed use or wasn't even vacant. So if you're taking a single family home, but it doesn't comply with existing setbacks or heights, but you want to adaptively reuse it into a fourplex or whatever, that then you would still have to submit building permits and still ensure that the health, safety, and welfare is ensured through that process. But you wouldn't necessarily need a development permit to say, we need variances because these setbacks are too tight or whatever the historic structure is, however it's cited on that piece of land.
Okay.
So with some of these adaptive reuses of the materials, I mean, what I'm reading from this is that it doesn't necessarily have to be used on that particular site, but it could be used on any future sites. How would we go about doing that? Would we have to create some type of market for that? Like, so I tear down a building in the exchange, whatever, it has significant issues that it can't be salvaged, but all the materials for the most part are good, whether that be the exterior or whatever. I want to build a building in Charleswood for seniors, and I really liked whatever it was there. How would we go about keeping that material?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'd need a bylaw. We want to be serious about that, and we'd have to do a little more digging into the exact language that they use. Some of these other cities have had success in saying, if you're tearing down this historic building, we want to see a plan for the reuse and recycling. If it's not reused, and then the recycling of those materials, so they're not just ending up in the landfill. So it has been done, but we'd have to work with our legal services to see how it can be done.
And nobody's just going to store it on hand somewhere for months, years, decades.
There are some places that do, but as far as
It's a good idea. I'm just saying it doesn't exist currently. Right? So it will be some sort of marketplace.
Yes, that's right. There are a few, stores in Winnipeg who do that to some extent, as far as old windows and doors or old lighting fixtures.
Okay. Would anyone like to move the public service recommendation then?
You move the public service recommendation.
Okay, and then this would appear for consideration in the zoning rewrite, as I understand.
This will be received as information and the department will consider this as part of the zoning rewrite. Doesn't necessarily appear again as a separate item.
No, but it will be under consideration in the zoning rewrite.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great. Councilor Santos moves. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you. Item number 3, which is the amendment to the community groups occupying city-owned facilities. Madam Director.
Sure. Gord Chappell and Jess Casera are joining us to speak to this issue.
Great. My understanding is this is a cleanup.
Yes.
Thank you, Jess. Sorry, Gord, I apologize.
So this is a housekeeping item. So the public service is recommending updates to bylaw 89, which covers community groups using city-owned facilities. This bylaw allows eligible groups to use city properties without having to pay property taxes. So certain things that are now exempt under the Province of Municipal Assessment Act are community halls, recreation arenas, community centers. So we're really just cleaning up the list, taking off items that were already exempt, and just changing the names. So going forward, the list will continue to be updated wherever new leases and licenses get approved, so it stays accurate. So no one is coming off the list that will need to start paying property taxes. It's just sort of a cleanup on our end.
So, but currently, right now, within the property tax assessment department, do we have to change it there as well? Like the people who were paying?
No,
Or has that already kind of been happening?
I think it's already kind of been happening, so this is just to clean up the list on the bylaw.
Okay.
And then going forward, we'll just update it as it goes.
Any other comments? Just have one, I apologize, because I'm reading through the list of these wonderful community centers and obviously taking note of my own. RCV Sportsplex is not located at 911 Oakdale Drive. So that is in Appendix A, draft amending bylaw. I don't know the rest of the addresses. I hope that there was some attention paid to the rest. I'm not going to go through them myself, but that would have to be amended to reflect 4230 Ridgewood Avenue, RCV Sportsplex.
Great, we'll take note of that.
Yeah, I apologize, but
Thank you.
yes.
Do you want to put this in the?
Do we have to amend that?
I mean, is there another opportunity for a potential review without us slowing this process of these addresses?
And we can amend it right now.
Okay, and hopefully the rest are accurate.
That is accurate. That is the Ridgewood address. That's what the city is using, is 911, not Ridgewood. So that's Springers and the arena and the baseball fields and everything.
So
that's what comes up on iView. That is the city address. I know Springers is a Ridgewood address for whatever reason. The arena
there's no fronting on Oakdale.
I know that's just what the city is using as its address.
Google has a different address.
That's
On
listed
Google.
as well.
You can take that back maybe before EPC and just confirm
Sure.
what the
yeah,
correct
that'd
one
be-
is, but
that'd
that
be
is what
good.
is coming up in our system.
I don't know how that would be possible, but
It's I'm gonna suspect that Oakdale potentially would have gone through at some point to Wilkes, and the door faces that direction for the arena, and it may have been that just what it was. Usually the door facing the street is the address, so there's no access point from Ridgewood. Just a speculation. At any rate, our department addresses, so we'll go back and
okay,
confirm
great.
the correct.
Thanks. Okay, so we won't make any amendments at this point in time. But
I
we'll
have
revisit it.
One question, I noticed on there, it's got Burkevale. It's got Fort Air Community Center, then it's got Burkevale Community Center, but I have a Burkevale Community Club in my ward on Ferry Road. It's not spelled the same, it's got Burke with an E. Burkevale, but there's none listed there for Ferry Road. Is that community club not listed for some reason?
It could be exempt, under the bylaw, so it might have never been on this list, however, it was already previously exempt.
I only said it because there's one that almost looks like the exact same writing.
We can definitely look into that as well,
Okay.
This was supposed to be the easy report.
yeah.
That's what happens when people read things.
Thank you
All right.
for reading.
Then we will,
Okay, so we can move as it was
that?
Oh,
Ferry Road
Period, okay.
we'll
we might
move
have to
that
make amendments at
and then
EPC possibly.
with an E.
We'll wait for the public service to provide
We'll double
additional
check this.
information at EPC. That's
EPC? Yeah. I'll move the public services report.
okay. So that's on item number 3. Councilor Santos moves recommendation to lift public service. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and that is carried. Moving on to item number 4, which is the proposed license agreement between Friends of Peanut Park, Inc. and the city of Winnipeg located at 11 Ruskin Road. We heard from delegation in regards to the fee. Public service overview here.
So the public service has negotiated a license agreement with Friends of Peanut Park to maintain 2 art sculptures located at 11 Ruskin Road. The sculptures were donated by a Winnipeg resident and installed in the park for everyone to enjoy. Friends of Peanut Park is a local nonprofit organization focused on improving the park. Since they started, they've raised and contributed over $80,000 towards landscaping and other upgrades. We are seeking approval to enter into a below-market agreement for the group.
And then, but that, one of the question,
Please.
delegation had mentioned something about a $300 annual fee.
Yeah, so that is an admin fee that we charge to all of our nonprofit tenants. So they do get the rental waiver, so there's the $1 rent. But the admin fee is charged annually to all nonprofit tenants.
To cover the cost of our staff writing the reports, doing the work.
And the argument being that they didn't ask for this, it was imposed on them.
So if there's a desire to appeal that fee, it should go through the fee waiver committee and let the first pass as the director to determine whether that's appropriately applied to the.
Oh, so then, okay, so the nonprofit group can apply for a waiver through the fee waiver committee? Is that something they do like online or?
Yeah, we have a webpage that people can apply to there.
Through there? Okay. And then what about the document preparation fee? That's not,
They are already exempt from that.
oh, they are exempt
Yes,
from that?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to fill out the nonprofit criteria, so they met that. So it's just put in our document as for tracking purposes, but they are exempt.
Okay. And then
Please.
final question, I guess the language on page 6 with respect to the administration fee is a bit confusing.
Yeah,
So it does say will be waived. But you're telling them they have to go and do a
Yeah,
fee waiver approval.
I think that was set up on the expectation there may have been opposition to that fee because it does say subject to. So unless
Okay.
it's approved, the waiver, then it would be applied. So I think we could have worded that a little better. But the intention would be that we would apply the fee unless it is appealed to the fee waiver committee.
Madam Clerk, do we have authority to waive fees or does it go through the fee waiver committee?
The authority to charge this fee is charged under the Planning, Development, and Building Fees bylaw, section 17, which stipulates the director can charge fees. So the appropriate process is, as Gord said, once the director has applied the fee, they can apply to the fee waiver committee.
Okay.
And from that,
What is the
Could be an
fee
opportunity to-
to the fee waiver committee?
I don't think there is
I don't think that
There's no fee to appeal?
Yep.
And then that would be the committee that makes the decision?
yes.
And that is, the committee is,
It's an administrative committee.
okay, that's City of Winnipeg employees?
Yes, I believe.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it's essentially the director, and then it's appealable after that if they don't agree with the decision of the director or the fee waiver committee.
Just going down the road here, should the director uphold or the committee uphold the decision of the director? What is the fee to appeal?
There is no fee to appeal a fee waiver committee decision.
Okay, and then that would appear before this committee?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think that the process should be followed here. If we do get to the point where it appears before us today, or again in the future, we can consider it as a committee. Sounds like there is a method to get back here for that. I apologize that that route is a bit onerous, but do we know if the area councillor has donated to this initiative through the communities fund or land dedication fund? I should have asked that of the delegation.
A tax receipt.
Tax receipt.
Yeah.
There's been some contribution from the city to the group.
Okay, other comments from committee here? And if possible, sorry to put this on you, Madam Clerk, are we able to communicate to the delegation what the process would be to appeal this?
We can do that administratively. Yeah,
Okay.
that's not an issue.
Okay, thank you. Motions?
I'll move the Winnipeg Public Service recommendation.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 5, which is the proposed sale of 491 Salter Street. to, Macrae, is it?
McCray,
McCrae, thank you. Day Nursery Inc.,
that's great. This is good news.
Public Service.
All right, so this report is in regards to direction we received from council to sell leased buildings to current non-for-profit tenants. McCray Day Nursery proposed to buy 491 Salter for $200,000 and will continue to operate as daycare. The tenant has invested over $600,000 into the facility over the last years. And the appraisal that we obtained, the building value came back at $615,000. So we are seeking approval to enter into a below market sale.
So, these, leases have been, in this position as the tenant since 1985. I can assume that several, campaigns for, expenses have taken place. Essentially, this is the city. And if it's 600 and change, a $400,000 contribution towards childcare. Please sing from the top of the mountaintops, if at all possible, about this. Any comments, questions from the committee?
This is really good news. They've been a huge asset to the community. Not in my community particularly, but I know.
We know how many spots there are at this childcare center?
That I'm sure. I think it might say. I know they're full and that they do have a wait list.
Shocking.
Yeah. No, I'm not sure.
I do see here, okay, so there is a condition of the sale that the daycare stay as a daycare for the next 15
Yeah.
years. Okay, and they're supportive of that?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I'll move the public service recommendation.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, seeing none, that is carried. Thank you very much. A request to enter in consecutive short-term use agreements with Downtown Community Safety Partnership at Millennium Library located at 251 Donald Street. Any questions from the public service here?
Yeah, so this isn't a option, is this the option to extend? Is that what this is? Because they're in there and then.
We were directed to enter into a long-term lease. The pilot program was only 2 months and then it got extended to 2 years. So we did the first short-term use agreement, which carried us through 1 year. And then by the time we get into another long-term lease, their pilot program might end. So we're just asking to go into another short-term use agreement to take us to the end of the pilot. And if that were to get extended, we would then look at a long-term lease.
What's the end of the pilot? Mark?
I think it's still, 2027.
2027?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Clearly, we have the Chair of Community Services, SBC here, but any comments from Community Services about how well this is working and that incident rates are going down at the Millennium Library? Anything at all?
We haven't followed up on that specifically.
No.
I think the program's been successful
Yeah.
and it's been productive for the city, but I don't have any metrics to provide.
Okay, well, if our CAO is listening, it'd be helpful to have our Director of Community Services comment on whether or not this is a good agreement to be entering into. We see the data come back that would indicate that this is a good agreement to re-enter into, but it'd be nice to see support from the department or maybe not support. So, any movers?
I'll move it this time. I'll support the Winnipeg Public Service recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, seeing none, that is carried. Verbal report on the conversation of the former Aubrey bus loop to community park space and urban dog park. Public service.
So the public service was directed to circulate the former Aubrey bus loop and determine interest in the site and use. Our circulation is now complete, so just reporting back the results. So the proposed sale of land was not supported by Parks or the HAF office. Parks expressed their interest in preserving the site as an extension of green space and noted requests to establish a community garden on the property. The HAF office indicated preference for developing the land for affordable housing. Transit advised that they will no longer require the land as of July 2026. So they would be are prepared at that time to declare it surplus. And the area planner advised that the highest and best use would be development under the Schedule AC of the zoning bylaw, paired with a subdivision to allow for a mix of single-family dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. So equivalency is approximately 7 single-family homes could fit on that lot.
Interesting.
Okay.
On the entire lot.
Yeah, on the portion that we circulated, so just the bus loop area, and then there's the park portion there.
Okay, stays there. Okay.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah.
If we go over to our mapping system, sorry, let me get caught up here. And how many lot lines show there?
Yeah, there's some underlying lots there. I think there's,
4 or 5,
yeah.
yeah.
So when we heard from delegation, yeah, okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full lots. 54 meters, I believe it is. When we heard from delegation, it sounded like they were interested in a combination potential mixed use that included, conveniently enough, daycare, potentially services in the neighborhood, but geared towards a multifamily, potentially aging in place, supported housing there. Parks. Parks has parks mandate to carry out, and that's to acquire additional park space. So I respect that, but it sounds like the neighborhood is in favor of additional housing and uses in the neighborhood. How would we go about moving in the direction of marketing the property, potentially looking at carving off a little bit here to add to that park, because it does, I guess, kind of engage with ET 16 there. But then also having some ongoing conversation with the neighborhood to ensure that should it be marketed successfully, that whomever the potential buyer is implements some of the needs of the community.
Yeah, we could come back with a formal report to declare the land surplus and then have some mock-ups of potential subdivision options and building layouts so that the committee can consider whether, 7 houses or 4 or a daycare, whatever the case is the most appropriate use for that land.
Or cottage court.
Or a cottage court.
Yeah, I mean, at the corner of Lipton and Wolseley, is a multifamily. I mean, this neighborhood lends itself to welcoming these types of assets that might not be the case in all neighborhoods. And if we have community members coming forward saying that they would like more mixed use that includes potential childcare and potential seniors housing, I think that we should definitely look at that as the priority. So, okay, so the recommendation, the advisement of the public services that they can come forward with mock-ups of some sort. How would we engage with community? Would it just be them showing up in delegation to speak to these?
Yeah, we don't typically do dedicated public engagement. It would be the expectation they would come in delegation to the committee. If public engagement was employed, that would be a completely different
It has
process.
to be approved by council.
Yeah, we would use the Office of Public
I
Engagement.
don't recall in my time on the committee or serving as chair that for surplus land that we ever do that. Was there a case?
219 Provencher was the last time that we used Office of Public Engagement. But yes, typically we don't engage.
Is there any recommendation at all, Madam Director, that you would?
If the committee would like to give us additional budget that would support community engagement, we would be more than delighted to do so. But at this point in time, with the number of large initiatives that we have underway, for instance, the zoning bylaw alone is approximately 200 meetings over a 2-year timeframe. There's just not staff capacity for significant community engagement at this time.
And then if it is declared surplus and you do come forward with mock-ups of what potentially could be offered to that community, I'm assuming that they will email their local counselor and potentially committee members to voice their opinions on it. This committee could then vote in favor of any of those potential ideas or not, and then send it back? Like what?
Yeah, you said, ideally, we would have a few options to present. You could endorse one of those. And we
Would
could
that
move
be
forward.
tied to the RFP process when you declare it a surplus then?
Yeah, we would make the sale conditional upon carrying out that intent. Could also, if there's going to be a motion, could also amend the motion to require consultation of the ward councillor. She could do a bit of the engagement herself with the community, publish things on our webpage or what have you.
Before we declare it a surplus?
Yeah, we could work the ward councillor through this process before the report comes back to provide those plans, and then she could distribute those as she sees fit, and then come back.
Okay.
Okay, I'm comfortable with moving forward to declare it surplus and have the department do some form of mock-up to offer as options. Madam Clerk, do you want specific wording here?
Just if this satisfies, that the public service be directed to report back to the standing committee in however many days, with a recommendation on declaring 139 Aubrey Street as surplus to the city's needs, including site plans of possible configurations and potential uses, and consultation with the
And in
ward councillor.
consultation with the ward councillor.
How many days would you like?
90 puts us to September.
Up to September?
Yeah, does that
Yeah.
work?
Sure.
Yeah, 90 days.
Okay, I can move that amendment. Is it an amendment? Motion?
Motion, yeah.
Okay.
All right, if that satisfies Madam Clerk, yes. Okay, so Councillor Santos moves that motion. All question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Item number 8 is our complete communities land monitoring report, which seems to appear consistently at the committee. Committee members, as you recall, we did hear the 2025 version of this, which unfortunately at the time was not encompassing of all the good news. Ta-da, here is the 2026 community land monitoring report, report 1 on development trends.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, joined by Michael Pill, our growth management coordinator, who does all the heavy lifting on these reports. Yes, you had just recently received a report like this. This is our annual Complete Communities Land Monitoring Report. The last report was received late in the day because of all the additional data and tracking we were doing to make sure we had it sort of up to speed. This report, Mike and the rest of us felt that we would come back in 2 parts. So we could bring you part 1 at a much quicker time frame, and then we bring back part 2, which will provide more information on how much land is available for new homes and businesses, and that will be provided at a later date when we get that data. So part 1 is just looking at look back at 2025 development, how many homes were built, how much infill, our downtown targets, and industrial and commercial use. But yes, I'll take it away, Mike.
Yeah, sounds good. No, certainly, I think we felt that while some of the contents of these annual reports take time to analyze and compile, others can be reported on pretty quickly. So that's sort of the rationale behind breaking up these reports into 2 parts going forward. So just to cover a couple of key messages from the report, in 2025, the city issued permits for the construction of about 6,200 new dwelling units, which is quite a bit higher, about 1,000 dwelling units higher than the annual average of about 5,300 over the last 5 years. The city continues to meet and exceed its 50% residential infill goal. In 2025, 62% of new homes were in the intensification target area. This was the 3rd time since 2019 we have exceeded 60%. This continues to be driven by high rates of multifamily development. In 2025, the city, as we've discussed the last time this came forward, the city far surpasses downtown target of 350 new homes per year, with over 1,000 new homes, really unprecedented volume of development here. This is expected to continue for at least the next few years, with approximately 2,300 dwelling units in the downtown pipeline. And then finally, the last 2 years have seen low levels of vacant industrial land absorption, only 20 acres absorbed in 2025. Compared to a 5-year average of about 48 acres per year. We attribute this mainly due to limited land supply and recent economic uncertainty.
Questions at all? No questions, but comments. That's fantastic. I wish we can hit the 70% intensification target. I'm a big proponent of densification, but really good work on the department of speeding up. I'm assuming it's just all these changes that we've done to kind of speed up, infill and densification. So great job, guys. This is really good news.
Thank you. We appreciate it. It also is, of course, in large part due to the Housing Accelerator Fund infusion of capital that helps bridge the financial stack for properties that otherwise wouldn't be able to build.
Yes, I agree with that. On my comments yesterday, when inquiries came in from the media, this speaks to when levels of government work together along with stakeholders, we can certainly get things done. My one question / comment on the industrial lands being sparse at this point in time, where are the opportunities to, resupply the inventory?
The real main opportunities, certainly in the short to medium term, are in Centerport South. The city and province have invested, I think, in total $60-70 million to fund the first phase of water and wastewater servicing there. So that's really next steps in terms of industrial land development in City of Winnipeg. Looking longer term, there's some additional opportunities. There's some designated land on the east side of Route 90 up towards the perimeter, Brookside Boulevard. It was previously referred to as Precinct A. That would be sort of 2030, 2040s opportunities. Beyond that, there's a bit of a geographic imbalance right now in terms of the opportunities for future industrial land over the long term across the city. We're all in kind of the northwest quadrant. All our eggs in the northwest quadrant basket right now. So I think during the next Our Winnipeg review, coming up in the next couple of years, there'll be an opportunity to look to see how we can provide more equitable distribution of longer term industrial land supply across all quadrants of the city.
Yep, Councilor Santos.
Okay, so I just put on my community services hat a little bit with the development of, you had mentioned the Northwest Quadrant kind of being significantly going to be intensified, right, with more housing coming online. What are the discussions about servicing the area? We know we talk about every time we grow the city and we increase the population, challenges are like water and sewer capacity is a big one, right? Green space is another one that we're talking about. And then the other one, thirdly, is probably a really hot topic, no pun intended, fire suppression. So we're seeing some challenges in the northwest side of the city that it is taking a little bit longer to get to some of these areas. So what discussions could we build into as we're developing the area? Could we put a little bit more pressure on developers? I'm going to be cautious of what I'm saying, that these areas need to have proper access, such as roads or land set aside for potentially another firewall or road access roads, so that somewhere like on Redwood and the Redwood station can get to these neighborhoods faster. So what discussions are we having there with developers, I guess you could say?
Yeah, well, the fulsome land monitoring reports, so this is the stuff that will be contained in the Part 2 reports going forward, scans future greenfield areas and tries to anticipate anticipated growth enabling and growth supportive infrastructure. So that's your roads, your fire stations, your water and sewer upgrades. And we try and do this really 5, 10, 20 years out. Realizing it's not going to be perfect, and eventually we'll get to precinct planning processes, and that's when we can really drill down and confirm some of these requirements. But we do try and capture this at a high level to get the bug in, say, in your ear, for example, or other elected officials in terms of what infrastructure might be anticipated. Get the bug planted in the ears of departments, thinking about their longer term investment planning strategies. So yeah, that's a big focus of our part two of this report, which will be coming forward later this year.
I think that the development community is focused on pipes and pavement, and there needs to be an understanding, I think, from council of investment, parks, recreation, protection before things move forward. I think that's one of the deficiencies we've seen in the Northwest, is that we don't have money set aside to acquire land for a major regional rec center or a regional park. And then fire and police often kind of come in later too as well, till we're not building a fire hall before there's any residences in place, right? So we need the land ahead of time. We need to forecast further in advance. So that's, I think, something that needs to be considered by council when we move forward with these.
Because construction material can go up in fire too, right?
Yep.
And so if
For sure.
we're constructing these homes, right, and there was an example, there was a fire in a construction home, and it took them a while to get out there. So I think it's important that, I think that still kind of needs to come a little bit more to the front now, is when we're seeing that happening. Okay, so when is the part 2? You said is coming out, what, in September?
We'd probably anticipate it would come out later than that, probably November, December.
Okay, and that at that point in time, I'll be able to see a little bit more about what I was talking about?
Yeah, I mean, you can also refer to last year's report as well,
Okay.
in the growth management section.
Okay.
There's some discussion. So we'll be updating the information that was in last year's report for this year.
Do we have a budget to purchase land, to think ahead and say, we need to have a playground here and we're gonna purchase this land, or we need to have a fire station or a police station or something, and purchase the land before they develop it all up and then we're in trouble?
In that area, the public service has submitted budget requests, but we haven't had any funding secured in order to acquire the land.
Okay. Just thinking ahead.
Good. Questions, comments, movers,
Sure, I'll move the public services report.
all in favor? Aye, opposed, seeing none, that is carried. That brings us to item number 9, which is the monthly reporting on variance applications made as of right residential developments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pretty consistent monthly report here. So far, again, just the single application received. It was appealed by the neighborhood, and it's going to the appeal committee at Assiniboia Community Committee, May 28th, I believe.
What was the variance?
The variance was for an additional 9 feet for one of their primary masses, and also no connection to a public sidewalk. However, there was no public sidewalk along the right of way. So we're looking at that item as part of the zoning bylaw rewrite, where we're gonna fix that. In the case where there is no front public sidewalk, and we'll have some additional language around that, so that variance doesn't keep getting triggered.
Mover on this
I'll move this one.
information?
To receive it as information.
Mr. Robson moves, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, seeing none, carried. Item number 10 is extension of time. This was requested by the area councillor to move the community committee recommendation on this.
Yes, and Councillor Lukes did request a suspension of the rules to consider that additional material. So if the committee wanted to grant that, and
Mover for the additional materials.
Yeah, I'll move suspension of the rules to add the delegations written submission.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, carried. Okay, that'll become part of the public record.
I'll move the community committee recommendation. And concur. in the extension of time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Moving on. Another extension of time. This is for multiple addresses on the Phillips Streets subdivision rezoning. Any comments?
11 to 18 were all supported by the community committee, all extensions of time, no concerns from the public service.
I can move an omnibus 12 to 18
Right.
consent.
Inclusive of 11 through
Oh,
18.
Did I say 11? Sorry, 11, yeah, to 18. Supporting all the community committee's recommendations for extension of times.
Any comments on that? Seeing none, call the question.
Trusting the public service.
Items 11 through 18 inclusive. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. Should we take a quick break before dealing with the last two items? Okay. Item number 19, opening of a portion of public reserve B plan. Catalco.
Yeah, so Catelco essentially is a service road for this area. A portion of it was closed by the adjacent developer. So the impact was that the other end of Catelco required a cul-de-sac. So a bit of the cul-de-sac will encroach into the park. At some point, if the development to the south gets absorbed into Sage Creek, there wouldn't be a need for Catelco at all. And this could be reestablished as a park.
Movers.
Yeah, so moved. I'll.
Public service recommendation.
Community committee recommendation.
It's the community committee recommendation.
Yeah.
That the public service is supporting.
Yes.
Yes.
That started at, sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
community committee.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Item number 20, 900 McLeod Ave.
As Mr. Chair, this was a rezoning of 900 McLeod Avenue from the EKT Community Committee from R1M single family medium to a C2 it's a place of worship for an expansion. It went through a rezoning in 2021. However, the rezoning, the bylaw expired. The applicant did not apply for any sort of extension. We supported it in 2021 and we support it again in this go around. There were a couple minor variances for some yard setbacks and an accessory parking area. However, it was all approved and the area councillor was supportive and we were supportive.
With the modification that they requested the application fees be refunded. So this is pretty much the same as the lease earlier, where the process for this should be that if there's a desire to waive fees, the community committee should move a separate motion from the separate of the rezoning or the applicant apply to the fee waiver committee.
So does this motion say that it will be waived?
Number 10, recommendation 10, is subject to the approval of the application that the Winnipeg Public Service be directed to refund all associated application fees less the cost of advertising. So we could send an communication to the ward councillor outlining the two options that exist and let them decide how to move forward, but adopt the recommendations without number 10.
That's what the public service would recommend.
Yeah, because isn't there certain fees you cannot waive,
Advertising, we don't waive because that is a hard cost to the city.
right? And then some like certain permitting fees that you can't waive either.
Again, you might, if I may, recall that we have been in the process of waiving, not requiring a significant number of development types to even need a development permit in the first place, which have cut our development permits, reduced them by approximately 37% for phase one. Phases 2 and 3 are too new to that process to even have an impact. So we are, in the process of reducing revenue as we waive some of the more simple types of development from even requiring development permits. Some of them may still require building permits. So we're in this very large process of cutting red tape. Any refunds to other application fees, we strongly recommend go through the normal processes without trying to jump the queue. At some point, you'll have revenue issues.
I prefer to go that way because that's how I have to do it in my community. And sometimes I'm successful and sometimes I'm not. So
Remind me, sir, where's in here? Mr. Leach, but when was this first brought forward?
In 2021, and council passed the rezoning in 2022. And the whole rezoning was to construct this addition to the existing place of worship because half of the lot was C2, but then half of it was single family, so they had to make it all C2.
Place of worship, do they pay property tax?
no, churches don't pay property taxes.
Board?
That sounds correct to me. I'll go with the counselor on that one.
In the events that they do pay property tax, it's significantly reduced.
But they do pay frontage levies.
And why did this not wrap up it's a 2-year period before?
That's on the applicant. They're expected to extend their application and they didn't for whatever reason. I don't know what was going on. They chose not to proceed or they forgot or whatever the case may have been. And they reapplied again.
Councilor Santos, you have an appetite to move subject to the striking of number 10?
Yep. So moved. Recommendation of the EKT be concurred in with the following amendments. Delete recommendation 10 in its entirety and forward it to the Executive Policy Committee and Council.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? That is carried. Any other business we'd like to address today? Seeing none, do I have a mover for consent agenda and adjournment?
So move for the adjournment.
Thank you very much. It's moved by Councillor Dobson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for joining us. We will see you back for appeals earlier